Welcome back to this month's CRECo.ai Real Estate Roundtable, your all-in-one comprehensive view of what's happening across the real estate industry, from some of the industry's earliest technology adopters and foremost experts in technology, marketing, brokerage, government security, government policy, security, and construction. As always, this is a three-part show. Part one, introductions for those new tuning in, who each roundtable host is, what they do, what's happening. Part two, sector focus. We unpack and dive deep into some of the biggest news affecting the industry. And part three, what does that all mean for your business? How can you adapt? How can you evolve? How can you do better for the next 30 days? I'm Andreas, Senie, founder, CRECollaborative, brokerage owner, and commercial director at KW, as well as a technology growth strategist for both the nonprofit and for-profit sectors. Joining me this month is none other than Saul Klein, Realtor Emeritus, data advocate, and Futurist, the original internet real estate guru and executive editor of Realty Times. Saul, nice to see you. How are you?
Yeah, it's great to be here. Things are good. You know, the sun's shining, it's not raining, so I don't have any complaints.
And car wash is running, but we're going to get to it.
People are washing their car again, and that's good news.
Also joining us, Chris Abel, membership director at Associated Builders and Contractors of Connecticut and member of the Society of Marketing Professionals. Chris, nice to see you, my friend.
Good to see you.
Fellow Northeasterner.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm enjoying the weather. Not so much, probably as much as Saul is out in California, but I can deal with this 61 day 40 when you wake up scenario.
And let's not forget from a little colder lands, Chicagoland, Maria Kowalik, SVP, Director of Business Development over at Inland Green Capital. All things green. Going green is always green.
And it's wonderful because today the sun is shining here too. So it's shining from sea to sea, basically. And things are getting pretty green out here, actually. So spring is almost sprung. But yes, we are a little bit colder than the rest of you. We're about 54 degrees today.
And let's not forget, and how could we ever forget, none other than Dan Wagner, also SVP at Inland Government Relations, all things policy, 1031. Dan, nice to see you as always, sporting your Inland banner. You always put me to shame.
Well, it's great to be here. And of course, I'm the official Abraham Lincoln Museum for Inland too. So I have all my Lincoln artifacts here in my office as well.
Wow, I love it.
From the land of Lincoln. There you go.
So, guys, I'm going to need your help. If the audience can't tell by now, I'm a little, my throat's a little dry. I'm going to do my best as we walk through the episode, but if I have to mute, just pick up and keep going. I'm sure you won't have an issue with that. That all being said, Dan, you're to my immediate right. I've got to ask. Biden's pulling 1031s or capping them, or what's going on in the policy world that's really causing concern.
Well, I got to tell you, it's kind of like that movie again, the Groundhog Day with Bill Murray, going back to what President Biden wanted to try to eliminate last year, the 1031. Then he said, I'll just cap it at 500. And then he did it again. So he just put out his budget again, and he wants to cap the 1031 at 500. He wants to get rid of stepped-up basis. He wants to double capital gains taxes.
But what does that mean when they cap the 1031? If they eliminate the 1031, what happens to those properties for the people tuning in?
So if the idea of capping the 1031 is absolutely, it's killing the 1031. So that's the reality. So yeah, there's no capping anything because you really couldn't. In commercial real estate, it just doesn't work. But there's lots to unpack with that, and I don't know if you want me to go into my my soliloquy, but I can go into that if you want.
No. Well, there'll be time for it. Let's and especially as I run out of vocal cords here.
And when you say they cap it, is that like $500,000 in gain? What's the 500 cap? Is that the gain from the?
No, it's the value of the property.
The value of the property.
Yeah.
So your car wash is already capped.
Yeah, you can't.
I hope.
You can't, it doesn't. It's not very much, is it, Saul?
No, not at all.
Well, so that would force the owners. Why would I sell if I'm going to get hit with that huge tax bill?
Well, to go into it a little bit, that's exactly right. What will happen is there'll be a complete utter shutdown of the transaction activity for commercial real estate. And as we all know, that this has been in the tax code for over 100 years, and there's a reason for it. It's because every time the elected officials come at it and say this is for fat cats and a loophole, then we're able to get all of our the forces gathered, and we have a very diverse coalition that educates the elected officials. What the reality is, though, is that the 1031, nothing is going to happen to it. The president's budget was dead on arrival because we have divided government now in Washington. So by having the House be in charge by the Republicans, there's nothing that's going to happen with this proposal. But what this means is that we, as commercial real estate practitioners, we have to be vigilant to always be ready to educate members of Congress about this. It's kind of, before all the people that came before us in this commercial real estate world that were able to keep the 1031, which I believe is like the 401k of real estate. I mean, there's so many great aspects we'll get into, is that we have to make sure and know who our members of Congress are and be able to talk to them to let them know the importance of not only 1031, but why doubling capital gains is bad, why getting rid of stepped up basis is another horrible thing. So we have a lot to talk about, but I will wait until a little bit later on in the show.
It's so I recently was lucky enough to host the mayor of Stamford, and we were talking about different things, and it would seem the government would want to do as much as possible to help us, not prohibit or inhibit our ability to transact. At least that's the take I got at the local level. But Saul, before we dive deep in that direction, what's going on in California? How are things on your end?
Well, our market's pretty good here in San Diego. Not a whole lot changes, just different ways to buy things, different ways to sell things. There was something interesting in LA. They're implementing this mansion tax issue, which is anything that sells for over $5 million, there'll be like a 4% sales tax, added transfer tax, and anything over $10 million, something like a 6.5% tax. And it doesn't matter whether you made any money or not. There's going to be a tax on the transfer. And of course, houses, $1 million doesn't buy you a mansion in California. So again, this is in LA County, but that could spread, things start in California and they spread across the United States, and then they figure out they're illegal, right? So you got to watch what's happening here, because it could affect everybody. So that kind of got my attention the other day when I saw that they're going to use this money to take care of the homeless, they say, but there's no plan to do it. The government has a way to take in money, but there's no plan what they're going to do with it. I'm always suspect. So
we just got a new mayor elected here in Chicago, Brendan Johnson, and one of his first proposals out of the box is going to be to triple transfer taxes on any property over $1 million.
Jeez.
Well, that's just to make up the difference between the proposed cut on the 1031 exchange, right? Just to eliminate the profits. If you can get it down enough.
There's lots of wild ideas. He wants to raise $800 million, and real estate is going to be a big piggy bank for him.
Well, whenever the government spends more than it should, and that's most of the time, one of the places they always look is at real estate, because that's where the money is. And so we have to be very vigilant on all fronts, I think, on all types of properties, because if the government can come in and take money from you for a transfer, whether or not you made any money on it, right? Because it's not on your gain, it's like the sales price. That's what the law is here, and I'm sure that's what they're talking about in Chicago on the sale price. Well, that's just stifling to real estate.
Well, one of my good friends is a big luxury broker in the city, and right after the election, he literally called me up and he said, "Oh my God, I just lost 3 commissions. I had 3 big condos that were over $1 million were going to sell, and he was going to had 3 buyers, and all 3 buyers for 3 different properties said that now that Brandon Johnson's now going to be the mayor, they're not coming to Chicago. So they said he lost the 3 deals right after the election."
They're coming to Connecticut. Remember that conversation with Dr. Yoon and I where he said Connecticut's not the place to be? Connecticut's the place to be. just bring that back up to everyone's attention.
If you're a basketball
Maria,
fan, it is.
The basketball fan. But the only place the government seems to be throwing money is that green energy, anything green on your side of the fence. And then, Chris, you were saying that there's not enough room in the sandbox for the construction world, the GC world. What do you think, Anna Maria?
So I must say that CPace activity has picked up quite a bit. Also because it is fairly recession proof, and whether or not anyone thinks we're in a recession or near one or coming out of one or however you want to look at it, the consensus is that lending is tighter. Interest rates are still volatile, even though we've seen a recent downward trend. So basically, what CPace does is, I can tell you that our rates now are about at pre-pandemic level. And so there's not that much of a difference, and it's always less than half of what construction lending is out there for, and it has a better quality, being a long-term financing product in comparison to mezzanine or bridge lending. So it's really a great option. We're working deals, and hopefully they'll come to fruition because you never know in this climate. But things are looking up and looking greener. Like I said, even out the window today, much greener.
Always going green with CPace. Speaking of going green, the construction industry is on the move. Everybody's building again. Chris?
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, every contractor that I've been speaking to, and this obviously is kind of a broad term, they're just all in different spaces. Meaning, I spoke to a concrete contractor yesterday who is not busy at all right now, but jobs are going to be picking up in May or June, which actually surprised me that he's not busy right now. 2 minutes later, someone calls and says, "Hey, do you know any concrete contractors?" And then I go back and I'm like, "When's this kicking off?" "Oh, probably June or July." So I'm curious as to see a week from now, if they speak to one another, which I'm sure they will, if all of a sudden the guy who's going to be not busy now, if he's going to be able to squeeze out enough people to help on this new project. It seems like the contractors are trying to work as hard as they can together. I was in a room with 400 last week at our event, and they are willing to network, and they want to network, and the GCs want more subs, and the CMs want more subs, and they're willing to, take chances with different ones. It's like the tale of two cities right now, where at one end, everything is super competitive. The associates I'm dealing with are super, 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 super competitive. The claws are out, and they want to, "Hey, what did they say over there?" That type of thing. "Hey, I heard this." And they're taking every piece of information that they hear, and they're coming to a person like me who's in a director position at an association, and basically saying, "I'm hearing this. I heard this. What did this person say?" And I'm like, 6 months, a year ago, 2 years ago, in the back of my head, I'm going, that wouldn't have bothered you. You would have just moved on to something new in other business. But instead, everyone's got their rabbit ears, the rabbit ears out, no pun intended, for Easter coming along, and they got their claws out, waiting to see what's next. But and then we have some out-of-state GCs and CMs coming in and getting a lot of the work, which our GCs and CMs seem to be going out of state and getting their work. So as long as I could feed the subs, everyone seems to be relatively happy. But it's different. And this picked up in the past, I would say in the past 2 weeks, the past 2 to 3 weeks, I've had more, I'm just going to say it, more headaches coming across the desk and more things that need to be addressed, and they want it addressed yesterday, than I've seen in probably a couple of years, which is a good sign in the sense that I feel like as far as the pandemic goes, everything's kind of boom, everything's open. They want to meet, they want to talk, but it's also a little bit interesting. So I think my piece of advice for the end is tell everyone to kind of be kind to your centers of influence. Be kind to those centers of influence people that you lean on, because everyone's kind of coming out. Everyone's worried about what they have going on in that 20 minutes you have to speak with them or 30 minutes you have to speak with them. They're not thinking about what people have the other 23 and a half hours in the day. So it's interesting. Makes it fun. Keeps me having to stay sharp and on point. But it has. I haven't seen it like this in 4 or 5 years.
Well, with the exception of CPace lowering its rates, I think I heard Anna Maria say.
Well, some of the Treasury yields have been going down recently, but we're expecting in May there's, it sounds like the Fed's going to do another increase, and if that happens, who knows what's going to happen to the rates again? Everything's a moving target these days.
It's a balance. But it's this urgency that Chris started to bring up. And I certainly feel it. The brokerage community is out there buzzing, working on filling the pipeline, I guess let's call it. Deals are going to get done, and we've all been through this before. I don't see, Dan, to what your point was about 1031, we're having enough trouble transacting. Why even bring that to the table now? It's just not the right time, if ever. I agree with you there. And outside of sunny California, what can we do? Go ahead.
The other thing that's out there is the waters of the U.S. So the National Association of Realtors and big coalitions of people have filed lawsuits against the government to stop the EPA from implementing this idea that anything that is like a drainage ditch or a retention pond is a navigable waterway. So that's another roadblock for developers to have to go through the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. And there was, interestingly, today, first of all, the House passed a resolution saying that to block what the EPA is doing, and then the Senate actually passed the House's bill in a bipartisan way. Democrats came on board, which is very unusual. So a bill is going to be put onto the president's desk, and to say that this rule is going to be gone, but the president's going to veto it. And in order to override your veto, you need 2/3 vote, and there's no 2/3 vote in the Senate to be able to do that, or the House. So then the big fight will be in the courts, and that's what the whole real estate community is involved with. And again, another great example of paying your dues to NAR. NAR is Russell Riggs is the staff person at NAR and really in charge of this, and working with Katie Johnson and all the team in the law department. They are just so wonderful for fighting for us. But developers, farmers, everybody's just crazed about what this means for development.
Dan, you make a great point, and that is that people often lose sight of the value that comes from paying dues to NAR, and they lose sight of the value that comes from RPAC. The Political Action Committee, and nobody really fights for private property rights like the National Association of Realtors, and that's for homeowners, for commercial brokers, for agents, for everybody. And it seems like people are coming. It's interesting right now with the economy where it is and where we think it's going, and the fact that the government's spending so much money, and the fact that we got inflation, and yet there are regulations and things to inhibit the use and the growth of real estate and money. And I can't say enough good for what NAR does for private property rights. It seems people don't realize any longer, a lot of people don't, how important private property rights are.
Well, and that, Saul, you could have said it better. I totally agree. NAR, the other unusual thing is that we're probably one of the last bipartisan organizations because of what you just said with private property rights. You have some very liberal members, some very conservative members, and they might disagree on a million other issues. But when it comes to private property rights, we all lock arms and we walk into Washington together, and that blows their minds because every member of Congress has a realtor attached to them. And those realtors are boots on the ground in their district, and they know where all the people are who got involved in the campaigns of the congressman or woman. And we have that FPC, that federal political coordinator, that is able to really have the ear of the member of Congress. So I think one of the most powerful groups in Washington are the realtors. And for not just when you say NAR, people say, oh, that's just the residential brokers. No, about 51% of what they do in Washington is commercial. And really, as we all know, we all interact together all the time. And with RPAC and everything else, I'm a proud Golden RPAC Hall of Fame President Circle member, and I just can't tell everybody enough that that's a really good investment.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I agree 100%.
Well, and I don't want to leave ABC out in the cold here. Really, any notable association, what they do for their community, for their trade, for their area, their sector, if they're run right, they do amazing things. They're out there lobbying for the right things and the right reasons, and they're well known. NAR is the biggest and the best, and I'm a proud card-carrying member. Not for as long as you two gentlemen, but we'll work our way there, hopefully over time. And it's really great. I think the next Capital Day is coming up in May.
Yes. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, May 8th, Inland's actually going to be a sponsor of the commercial real estate cocktail party that's going to be on in the evening of May 8th. So if anybody's in Washington, D.C., make sure you come. And I'll be speaking at it as one of the as a sponsor of the event. But it's a really good time, and it's fun to get everybody together. It's like our family. You come together and you see a Bob Turner from Memphis, and you see Nancy Lane, and all these different people, and it's fun. So, Saul, are you going to be there?
I won't be there this year. I went for like 28 years in a row, and when I don't travel as much anymore. But I tell you, there was nothing like going to the Sheraton, Wardman Park, and the Omni Showroom, and seeing, like you said, seeing people who you know and who you trust and who you love, and
Yep.
getting something done in Washington, D.C.
Yep.
Well, and building that lasting relationship. Go ahead, Anna Maria. Yeah.
On the CPace side, we have so Inland Green is going to be one of the hosts for one of the events. CPace Alliance is our advocate in the commercial industry across the nation, and so they are coming to Chicago. Third week of May. So right as usually all the brokers are out at ICSC out in Vegas, we're going to be hosting here in Chicago. Also, the other definitive national organization, Pace Nation, is having their conference back in person for the first time this year since the pandemic. So June 6th and 7th in New York. So so things are picking up, and organizations both more fraternal and also those that do advocacy are really getting busy these days.
And getting together.
Yes.
People have to come together to get to know each other and to grow that lasting relationship. I remember some of my early ICSC events and others, and they're fantastic. They do tend to all group together, which is just terrible planning on everyone's part if we could space them out a bit. May 8th was, you said, Capital Day?
Yep. That's
for those of us who want to go out of country, ICSC is also in May, in country, and then we've got CRETech London on May 8th as well. So we'll more on that later in the show. Chris, is ABC throwing big events as well? You just said you had 400 people.
Yeah, we had our annual membership meeting a week ago, last Thursday. It was up 100. We were right under 400 people, up 100 from last year.
Wow.
There was another, and I will say there's another event going on next door in the same facility. So it's the first time in a long time where I've seen that facility have two events, kind of side by side. Whether they're related or not didn't matter. It was just nice to see so many people out and about, and kind of the whole stigma that was weighing over us over the past couple of years, kind of somewhat lifted. But we had what's interesting is within our chapter, we were celebrating new members, member milestones, all sorts of different stuff. It was a good time. Actually, you were at the event last year, Andreas.
Yes, it was a great event. You had quite a nice mic intro.
Oh yeah. I come off of that, and I usually, a few people are like, oh, what was that all about? But we'll leave that for another day. But like I said, the networking was was tremendous. Everyone was looking to, hey, can I talk to this person? Can you introduce me to this person? And it was a good time. But I agree, there's a lot of events going on right now. There's just, ABC National had their conference a couple of weeks ago, and it was the same week as the Connex out in Las Vegas. And no sooner did those two lift up that, in our area, the Northeast Hardscape Expo, and you saw a lot of people with tired faces because they were either in Vegas or they were down in Florida for the ABC convention. But it's just good energy. It's good, it's good energy. It's good to be out there with. It's good to look at even the local chamber stuff and see that they have, 1, 2, 3 things a month. I went to a business development boot camp last week, a bunch of architects and engineers and construction folks, and people are they're out. People are coming out, and that's one thing I will never complain about enough. About
Chris, I was just at a multi-chamber event today, and they had expo booths, and I held one of those, and then they had someone from the Federal Reserve speaking actually to the multi-chambers. But nice. We had probably about 400 people.
Yeah.
It's business is happening and continues to happen. It's yes, there's economic headwinds. Yes, we're navigating uncharted waters and a bunch of other things. But there's plenty of opportunities out there and people willing to strike if you can get the parties together, which is why I love the brokerage side of things. It's all about bringing people together. And the tech continues. All I hear is ChatGPT and these associations. We're all members of different associations here. Is the next generation, are new people flocking to the associations? Do they get
Very much so. Yes, I see young people all the time. I sometimes feel like the oldest person in the room. So, no, it's great to see that, and a lot more of the organizations are beginning to develop mentorship programs as well to be able to, deal with this onslaught of young people coming to the fore. So this is wonderful. This is the future of the industry.
Well, I know that,
go ahead, Dan.
I just was in Colorado a couple of weeks ago, and for the Realtors Land Institute, and a little sidebar, I went for a run outside the hotel, and I was out for just a little ways, and I was surrounded by 5 coyotes. So I made sure to turn around slowly and walk, get back into the hotel.
Well, that's why real estate people travel in packs.
Yeah,
going out alone.
Not exactly the networking you were planning on doing.
That was not the networking, but the Realtor Land Institute. That's all the farm brokers and ranch brokers around the country. And again, just like Chris, they had over like 400 some people. It was up by 100, and the young members that are coming and being a part of it was just terrific to see. And of course, as we all know, NAR has the YPN, Young Professionals Network, which is really just always growing strong. So it is fun as Maria to bring that up. It makes a lot of sense to see the youth stay involved with our organizations.
Yes.
So with the exception of an increased gas tax here in Connecticut or increased wealth tax in California, I don't hear any negativity on this month's roundtable. Business is happening.
There's plenty. It's just, are we really going to talk about it?
Let me dig through a few of my emails from today, and I'll give you some examples.
I'll throw a piece at you, and then that the case referred to as Moeller versus the National Association of Realtors, which is against 4 major franchises, and the National Association of Realtors and 20 MLSs in the country attained a class action certification. And the damages are estimated in the billions of dollars. It has to do with something called the Broker Compensation Clause, which was a positive move made in the 90s to move MLSs away from being a unilateral offer of sub-agency to an offer of compensation, which is one of the pillars of MLS, and that's being challenged and attained a class action certification here in the last couple of weeks. And the thing that is on the negative side to me is when you talk to many, many people in real estate, they don't even know that this is going on. potentially that could change the way in which real estate is bought and sold. Now, on the positive side, no matter what happens, real estate is going to continue to be bought and sold. And there might be new ways to do it, and new people making this happen, and new compensation structures. But there is a major piece of litigation going on right now on the residential real estate side that has the potential to alter multiple listing services.
That's right. And for those that don't know, that 5%, 6%, or whatever the percentage is, generally gets split between two parties, buyer and seller broker, and then their brokers. And it dwindles down. The commercial side's a little more resilient to the argument because we have to agree these commissions. It's all part of negotiation. But it's big news on the MLS side. Part of their terms is just that. What is the fair compensation between parties, and then what's fair to disclose? This is not new news, but it sounds like there was a major shift in the milestones of the court case.
Well, and the big news is certification for class action.
That's huge.
That's the big piece that's happened here. So, and these types of things don't resolve themselves overnight. We're looking at years as these things kind of work their way through. And again, once again, having the National Association of Realtors as an advocate and working for the MLSs, but we're going to see things that mergers, entities coming together. People who are sitting on boards of directors of MLSs and associations really need to begin to talk about this, weighing the liability potential that's there. This case is going back and looking at all the real estate sales from like 2000 and these 20 MLS market areas from 2015 to like 2019, and going after a certain portion of commissions and damages that could be devastating to some of these entities.
The MLSs themselves, the brokers are safe. We get to keep our money, right?
Well, that's easy. I think it's prognostication at this point to imagine that might be the case. I think the agents probably are a little bit more
insulated.
Yeah, probably. And probably the best thing people could begin to do in residential real estate today is look at the utilization, and we've been saying this for years, of buyer-broker agreements. And because that would take some of the sting out of this, but there's probably not a whole lot you can do for the years in the past, except hope for a win, and that doesn't seem all that likely. We'll just have to wait and see. But it's worth knowing about, and if you're practicing real estate, it's worth knowing about because more than likely your competitors don't know about it, and so you'll be able to talk about it in an intelligent way, and that's the differentiator.
Well, you certainly chilled the conversation. I asked for negative, and you hit it hook, line, and sinker right in the pocket. I love commercial for good reason. Go ahead, Dan.
The other negative for my commercial brokers that I know in the world are highlighting that with the rates up so high, the price of values of commercial is not going down, and so it's hard to come up with deals because of that. And then some people are starting to talk about in Wall Street Journal and stuff. They're talking about how the values of because of all this of commercial properties are starting to be impacted. So those are some things to look into the future.
Yeah, it's fair market price. What a right-minded and informed person is willing to pay, with a right-minded and informed person is willing to sell, coming together. Misquoted, but that's fair market value. We don't know where that is today between our buyers and sellers more often than not. Absolutely, I agree with that statement. And CPace is the only thing out there that just keeps on plucking away, apparently.
It's really good, and I like to be positive more than negative.
It's always silver linings. Go ahead.
Well, but it is an instrument that's repaid, via the tax assessment process, and of course here in our state, Dan's and mine, taxes are very high, and particularly in our county and surrounding counties, the Chicagoland area is in very high demand, and it's because it does well. It's the center of the country, and so much commerce goes through us. And so for some of the right reasons, some of the taxes are higher, but it makes people step back a bit and consider, have second thoughts about doing business here. But, and now, like Dan said earlier, we don't know, it's where are things going to go with the city of Chicago. And if there are going to be some exorbitant prohibitive taxes that, might put a damper on business in the future.
Anna Maria, I just was at a lunch day and I had somebody ask me, what are the things that can be put on the CPace? What are some of those? What are the list of things that can be?
Oh, goodness. So several categories: energy efficiency, just simple HVAC replacements for aging units. If you're replacing any building envelope to make the building more air and water tight. So roofing and additional insulation, windows, some exterior door configuration. Interior, exterior LED lighting, electrical systems, building automation, elevator refurbishment and modernization can have a lot of energy savings. Then another category is the renewables, solar, wind turbine, we've got all kinds of other potential new types of processes. You hear about green hydrogen and how is that going to work into, some of facilities, equipment, and whatnot. Of course, then you've got electrification and heat pump systems and geothermal, et cetera. Then when you look at water conservation, there are a lot of measures to be had with interior and exterior plumbing. Exterior, you might have rain sensors on landscape irrigation systems. Interior, low flow toilets and automated faucetry. All of these things can have an impact on consumption of utilities and therefore on expenditure. And then there's a great resiliency category that kind of is a catch-all for different things across the country. So perhaps in Saul's neck of the world on the West Coast, when you're building a new building, you might be putting in some earthquake resiliency measures. And those kinds of mitigative efforts in the construction process can be paceable. On the East Coast or anywhere really, anywhere where there's flooding and there's mitigation for that could be eligible. Also, we like to put in that category EV charging infrastructure and the electrification of vehicles throughout the nation and the growth of that area. That's one thing. Things like permeable pavers are allowable in certain areas, and lead pipe abatement. Things that make other systems run more efficiently and consume less energy and save on utilities expenditures. All of those kinds of things can be part of the CPace.
So optimizing your assets, improving from a C to a B.
Yes.
As an example, depending on
as an example, absolutely.
And new construction is always, people don't think you can do new construction, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's a great gap filler in the capital stack, because you might have, you might only be able to get a 60 to 75% loan to cost on your construction project. And then you've got a certain amount of owner equity that goes into it, but you might have that gap in between. And CPace can take the eligible measures, line items, straight out of the construction budget and be able to finance those particular items. So Yeah, so you can help talk about it and help spread the word, everyone.
It's interesting because plenty of deals are slowly getting done. They're still getting done, but
Yes.
everyone's looking a little closer. So if
Yes.
you can move the needle 5%, 3%, whatever it is, by adding in the CPace component, all of a sudden that construction financing for the actual build is more appealing to the bank and so on. So that's very interesting.
Totally.
But it's all about having the right people out there to help you and the
Yes.
right advisors. CPace is big news. It has been for some time. I'm sorry to hear that Chicago isn't doing well. Send your clients to Connecticut. We're doing well. But just kidding. But it's market by market is really what I'm driving at. There's opportunity, growth, and cycles in every market in different levels. You just have to draw your own boundaries.
That's right.
And find your own programs.
As you say that, Andreas, we were talking the other day, like certain downtown areas are suffering, but certain adjacent downtown areas are prospering. Mm-hmm. And so it's a matter of finding those opportunities that are out there, and they're there.
In your state, in your county, and I'm picking on Chicago. Chicago's doing incredibly well. I'm just because you guys brought it up, and I got slammed on that prior sector interview.
No, and it is a beautiful. I'm born and raised in Chicago and love the city and have always, appreciated it. And one of the cleanest cities, still, despite so many different mayors, and it doesn't matter. People take pride in the Midwest, I think, in general. And
no, there is still and I don't know how else to say this. There's still a gentlemanly walk and talk and handshake in Chicago and in that area. The way people interact, there's a charm to it. I like it. Anyways, or in other areas, interestingly enough, and I want to ask this group. So now we've seen this mad rush out of cities into Florida, to the Sun Belt, different areas. Different investors have said to me over the last month, well, we're done with the Sun Belt because that's where everybody flocked to, and that's going to see the biggest swings as things shift. Are we now, in your opinion, going to see a return to different markets, the Northeast, for investment as things stabilize over the next 3 years, 5 years?
Well, that's an interesting question. I know that we're always still very, excited about Florida, excited about Texas, Tennessee, great places, Arizona. So we're all in.
In
on the Sun Belt, where it's sunny and you can go greener with solar.
The other big deal is the taxes. I mean, places that are really good with taxes is so wonderful because you don't have these swings of property tax that all of a sudden you have triple property taxes, and so that's another important aspect of all this.
And I think you have to remember that baby boomers, are really driving a lot of this movement, and so that's not going to cease for a little while yet. We're just at the beginning of that grouping. So
shift in ownership, shift in living and location. And Zoom just doesn't cut it. We've all kind of agreed that we have to get back in person, which is a good thing overall. I'm happy to hear it.
But I'm glad we're not in person right now because I do not want to get your cold.
I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy. Thank you for bearing with me on it.
God bless you.
The networking was well worth it. But
you should have wrong hand.
Who knows?
There's some people like show people. They you still do it. I mean, that's a good job, Andre.
Then thank you for putting up with my my throat here. So here we are. It's April, right? We're headed. We have high holidays. Summer's coming. Spring has sprung. We're at 15 minutes to the top of the hour. What's the biggest thing you would encourage from your sector, from your side as a mentor, as a sector expert, as a pioneer, looking backwards, looking forwards? What's the big takeaway for the audience you want to give? And again, to my right, Dan, in the Abraham Library.
Absolutely. Abraham Lincoln is the guy. I always... tax law is just the very bread and butter of our industry, and it's so important that if you don't have a relationship with your member of Congress, you really need to. You need to be able to go to their office, know their staff people. The typical staffer is about 22 years old, and they really don't know a lot about real estate because they have so many issues on their plate. So I always just highlight, you have to go and get to know these people and explain what you do and explain how commercial real estate, like the 1031, how that impacts your community. I know that over 976,000 jobs are created by the 1031. You have in Naperville, which is right near where we are here in Oak Brook, in Naperville, Illinois. They had a dark Kmart for many years, and the owner of the Kmart was an older gentleman. He had little nail salons and other little things in this strip mall, but really it was weeds and looks horrible. The only way that he was going to be able to sell that building was through the 1031, and he did. Costco got it. Costco, ripped everything down, which created an incredible amount of jobs. And then with the Costco up and running, another whole set of jobs are created, and sales taxes generated for the town, and all that stuff. The realtors that sold these things, the bankers, the financiers, the lawyers. There's so many aspects to what commercial real estate does, that just the simple idea that this 1031 is for fat cats. It's like, no, this is the 401k of real estate. We grow our pre-tax dollars. We grow our portfolios just like you do in your 401k. And that's the secret sauce to the American economy, that we're the spark plug for our economy, and local, state, national, and all these taxes that get created. You have over like $19 billion a year that gets created from the 1031. And if you were to get rid of it or cap it, you're only bringing in about $2 billion a year. So that obviously the juice isn't worth the squeeze. And it is also the frustrating thing is to be able to make sure they understand that in underserved communities, that 1031 plows a whole bunch of money into an area. Bronzeville, which is part of Chicago, they had a food desert, and they were able to, a guy started to develop a Mariano's grocery store. A big old New York firm came in 1031 and put in $1 dollars, a whole bunch of money into this area that needed it. And it was such a boost into this area. This food desert was gone, and people are really proud of their community by having this there. And that wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for the 1031. People weren't going to invest their money there. And so that's important. But then again, the farmers are important. Farmers love the 1031, and that's a whole other aspect. And then the other aspect are the environmental lobbyists. The different groups, conservation funds, they want to make sure to have open space too. So all these different groups coming together. So I guess my long-winded point is all of us have to get to know who our members of Congress are, because we have to educate these people. We have to stand in the breach just like our ancestors did before us, to be able to make sure and keep this in the tax code for the next 100 years.
Okay.
Yeah, Dan, you make a great point, and that is that 1031 allows you to build estates with pre-tax dollars. And that's not just a statement. If you looked at the math and you projected that over a 20-year period, you'd see just incredible the benefit that it brings. And I can't, taking away putting a $500,000 value cap on it just basically takes it away.
Yeah.
It's all. The other interesting thing is that we talked to the IBEW, the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, and they said that it's important for people to realize that private unions have to fund their own pensions. And so the pensions funds of teacher unions, all these different unions, they are funded through a large part by investments in REITs. And REITs are very much impacted if the 1031 goes away, because it repositions their portfolios. And so you're talking about fat cats. No, you're talking about the retired teacher, the retired IBEW worker, all these folks who are saying, we need to make sure to pay for our groceries. And that's a real deal. And so those are some aspects that people don't necessarily even think of. So it's this holistic aspect that you got to look at everything. And that's why everybody listening today, please get to know who your member of Congress is. That's my big takeaway. Get to know member of Congress, get involved, and make sure to vote. And that's a huge deal.
I love it. And for the record, everyone listening today, only because somebody actually fact checked me with ChatGPT when I was saying something, I was speaking, and they checked it on ChatGPT and they said, "Oh, it says you're right." ChatGPT hallucinates and can be wrong all the time. Check with a real person who's knowledgeable and experienced in any subject and sector. Don't go to Wikipedia. Go to Britannica for your insight
and to follow through on.
Well said with what Dan said.
Well, and to follow through on what Dan said, which might be lost in some of the conversation, but is the most important part. Why do you need to get to know your government officials? And that is, as industry experts, to educate them, educate, because that is what we do here in the CPace industry on every single transaction, every single day of our lives. We're always out there putting out the word and educating people on how it works, how to utilize it, what the benefits are. And so I too will leave everyone with the education factor, as well as encourage young people coming to the table and into this industry. There is a lot of opportunity in the green space, and more so as time goes on. It, like I've always said, the future is green. And I'm sure Chris will be able to take it from here and talk about how important it is to have green initiatives in construction industry as well.
Sure, and I gotta kind of back the rest of the team here on it. It's funny that you mentioned it, because getting in front of those Congress men and women and learning about their staff and all that sort of stuff is, I mean, it's pertinent. It's exactly what you need to be doing. And also you give yourself an opportunity to get in front of them and not just go with the negative and not just go with the, okay, I'm having a problem, now I'm going to come talk to you. If you get to know them, then you can have open conversation, which makes the uncomfortable conversations a little bit easier. So case in point, earlier this week, I had within our office, we had a little event where we had Eversource Energy come into our office to do a presentation to talk about some of the incentive programs for contractors that they could sign up for and pass on to their clients and pass on to their customers. And a few people mentioned the idea of, you got Eversource coming in, my electrical bill is this, is it? Like, all right, listen, these guys are coming in. They are not the people who are just sending you your bill. They're coming in to talk about the incentive programs, and they're coming in to talk about the things that you can do to help people go green and how you can use it as a benefit and get these rebates and all that sort of stuff. So I encouraged a bunch of the electricians. I said, come in and have the good conversation and the uncomfortable conversation, a nice, comfortable atmosphere. And the same thing goes for things like OSHA dealing with the Congress, the people in Congress, all those entities. You don't want to be the one who's just complaining about the restaurant that you just ate in. Give them their fair shake to explain themselves and talk about different things. So it kind of goes a little bit back to what I said jokingly earlier about being kind to your centers of influence, having a understanding that these people have 24 hours in a day, just like you, not just the hour that you're spending with them, and being cognizant of their time and what they're doing. And I'll tell you, I love having entities like the politicians, OSHA, any safety folks, the Eversources of the world come into our office and meet with our members, because they're in a spot where they can just have these conversations. And usually what happens is they end up hanging out after the event while I'm cleaning up, and they start to talk about some of the incentives and the plans and how we could go green and be more energy efficient. I know in Connecticut, one thing that's going on without really going into it, is the energy efficiency. Any of the schools, there's this big push on the legislative side for any of the schools to become more energy efficient, and it's a whole other topic, but it affects the people I deal with. And I mean, we're just in droves. We're getting conversation about this because if they're making these updates and they're doing these type of things, they're being, if those things are happening within the schools to improve the school's energy efficiency, they're trying to put PLAs on all of them, the project labor agreements. So the guys I work with and the men and women I work with are coming to us a lot at ABC just because, they're like, is this true? We're a merit shop based thing. But long story short, without going into that stuff, I agree. Build those relationships so you can have the uncomfortable conversations as well as the comfortable ones, and you can ask them how they're going to spend their, holiday weekend, just like you can sit there and complain and nobody walks away feeling like it's a massive contentious situation. And, it's the best way not to get ghosted on your next email, phone call, or in-person conversation. You don't want people going across the room at these networking events. We've been inside too long.
Avoiding it. Try not to complain, criticize, and blame.
Sure.
I think is the old adage. Saul?
Andreas, I would add that, and I agree with what everybody said, but I would say also realize that land use policy in the country is changing. And that you should really take a look at walkable versus drivable, and all the benefits that come from, and the value premiums that we're seeing in prices and around ownership as well as renting in walkable communities as opposed to drivable communities, and that has all kinds of benefits. So we've got housing issues, we've got land costs that are too much. What's the solution? And I think that if we look hard at mixed use and walkable versus drivable, we'll find some value there, and that's where I would be looking.
And well said, everyone. As always, I echo the sentiment of working with regulators, right? Working with your congressman, working with the people that can help shape that policy, and to Saul's point, figuring out what policies are coming into effect or are shaping your market. Because if the regulations change, then so does the value of the real estate. If they change, if they rezone from commercial to residential, guess what? You're in big trouble. And that's just a simple example. The biggest opportunity for a practitioner in my mind today is to get very close to the incentives that are happening, the ways the government is looking to deploy capital in infrastructure, around infrastructure. As you said, double density, walkability. There are platforms dedicated to that. There's technology growing in all leaps and bounds. But most importantly, there are seasoned professionals who know the lay of the land that we can all turn to at any point in our career. So with that, it's the top of the hour here. I do want to remind those that are interested in going as a subscriber to the show, as part of the audience, you do have the opportunity to attend CRETech London on May 10th and the 11th. 20% off. Use the code on screen. If you're not at CRETech London, you should be in DC with Dan, watching Dan speak. I don't have a slide for Dan speaking, but we will get one up post-production. And ICSC, do you know that one offhand?
Isn't that usually like the 22nd
Yep.
to the 24th, something like that? It's shortened this year. It's only 2 days instead of 4, from what I hear.
The conference calendar is picking up. Reach out to your network, see where you need to be. Becca's still hosting the luncheon, I'm pretty sure, this year at Vegas, and ICSC, CRETech, always great places to be. You heard it here. Mr. Mendoza, you can lead us out. Thank you to our audience for tuning in. Thank you to my co-hosts for being the most intelligent people and collaborative people I know. Thank you for tuning in to this month's Real Estate Roundtable. Download our show anywhere you get your audio, Apple Podcasts, Alexa, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Pandora, or simply ask Alexa to listen to the CRECo.ai Roundtable with Andreas Senie. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, where there's a host of great content, including sector interviews and past shows at CRECollaborative, or visit us at CRECo.ai. That's CRECo.ai. Your all-in-one dashboard to connect, research, execute, and collaborate online. Please do share, rate, and review us. It really does help. And thank you again for tuning in to this month's show. This show wouldn't happen without you. We look forward to seeing you next month.